welcome back to my channel. My name's Teigan, and my last video kind of blew up a bit, which is really cool. So if you're new, hi, welcome. This is going to be my wrap up for November, because finally, after I don't know how many months of being late, I finally completed my entire TBR on time. I finished it. I've also got a new microphone, so hopefully things should sound a bit better. We'll get on right with the video then. We'll start off with the books that I really couldn't wait to finish. Words of Radiance, part 1 and part 2. I've really loved the progression on the storyline with the characters that you get in this book. Definitely Shalon is definitely one of the top. Yeah, so where we kind of meet her and her development with Yesna in book 1, and how that then has progressed in book 2, especially in this kind of second part of the book, has just been so exciting to read. And I, again, cannot wait to start Oathbringer in December. I've also loved getting, you get a bit more time with Adolin. We get a bit more time with Adolin, and you know, as we get more time with him, obviously his character and his personality, I think, shines a lot more in this book than it has in others, and especially the kind of relationships between him and Kaladin and someone else who's, if you read it, you'll know, and like kind of that particular triangle, I guess I would say, has been an interesting development. I don't want to give any spoilers, so I think this is as much as I can say. You know, and then Kaladin's... Am I saying Kaladin? Kaladin. You got Adolin and Kaladin. Not confusing at all. Yeah, so Kaladin's kind of change of situations in this book, and then his actions from being in those situations has been really... Honestly, just... It's been kind of fascinating on how he views the world now. As to... He did, I say, at the start of the series to now. I mean, it's only technically second book, but for me it's like the fourth book for part 2. It's weird. And basically just at the end of part 2, how the plot thickens. Brandon Sanderson, just... I think it's really... definitely a hats off to kind of Brandon, and how he, with the interludes, kind of introduces you to characters or ideas, you know, in the first book, and then does the same in the second book. I think just his way of... I think it's just really good how he had introduced and slowly weaved all these characters together, and as the series develops, we get to see them intertwine and overlap, and I just think the way he's done it, I think if I read sorry, I'm not being very clear. I think the way he's done it has been spectacular, and I think if I reread the series now, I would enjoy it so much more, because I know the character. I think it's with most like longer series that once you've know the characters and how their kind of personalities are, when you reread that series at the beginning, you're then going to love it more. I think it's the best way for me to say that. And yeah, that's all I have to say for Words of Radiance. We will then get into To Sleep and in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paoloni. Now, it was a slow start, definitely. And I'll be honest, I didn't love this book. I don't know, I think it's just something maybe with his writing style that's just not something that I am into, because I know with the Eragon Inheritance Cycle series, I didn't particularly love that, and I was expecting more, I guess. You know, I didn't hate it. I enjoyed the story, but I wouldn't read it again. I didn't enjoy it enough to want to read it again. I think a big part of the book are the characters. I think, obviously, the big part of most books are the characters. And Kira, our main character, I just didn't get on with her. No, I didn't get on with her. She was just kind of off for me. You know, the way she reacts to certain situations, I wouldn't exactly say normally. The big one, which this kind of happens within... This could be classed as a spoiler, so skip ahead. The way she reacts to the death of her fiancé and friends in the beginning of the book, and it never really went anywhere. She was like, oh no, I'm sad, and then that was it. It just never really came up. And I think, you know, if fiancé is someone you're going to marry, you'd have a bit more of a reaction to it than I can't think about this now, and then never thinks about it. I think sometimes as well with the dialogue in the book, it seemed janky, I think is the best way I can describe it. I just didn't get on with sometimes the way the characters kind of interact with each other. So again, I think with the characters, it just all felt somewhat stereotypical, and there was quite a lot of cliches, I think. Whether you agree with me, let me know if you've read it. But one thing I did actually quite like is there was a little nod to the inheritance cycle with one of the characters whose name I think was Irina in the book. She basically had a cat with her, and she was saying like, oh, I like to be where things are happening. And even though the cat, I think it was like a werecat from the character in the... If anyone else noticed that, again, let me know, because I'm pretty sure that's what it was a nod to. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. Not one of my favourites. Sufficiently Advanced Magic. This book is one of my favourites of the month. I love the characters, 110%. I related to Corin so much, especially with his people problem, I guess. Not so much that he has a problem with people. He's just there like, these people with friends, I should probably go talk to them. But not right now, I'll go, study or read some books, and I was just like, Corin. I really found him funny, and his interactions with the other characters felt very natural. Not only is the main character really funny and interesting, especially with the way his story not his story, but just the way he grows within that story. I think the other characters around him are very intriguing as well, and I found myself wanting to know more about them as the book progressed. I just think Andrew Rowe was very good at leaving certain secrets that your brain's just like, what about this? This bit is like, tell me, I want to know about this, tell me more situation. So I think the pacing of this book is also really good. I never found myself bored at any point. There were faster paced moments and obviously slower paced moments, but it never felt too one-sided or too heavy, especially where it's kind of set place at a school where a lot of learning, and you wouldn't think there'd be much action, I guess. I don't know if that's quite a right way to think about it. But you see his progression, and I very much enjoyed it. The way the magic kind of works in this world is also interesting. I like the idea of kind of the trials they have to do, and that the fact that it's not like you're not born with it, you earn it to a certain degree. I'm trying to say stuff without spoilers. The fact that you have to kind of go through trials to then earn more is fun. I think definitely something that will put a testament to this book is that as soon as I finished that book, I went straight away and bought the sequel. The only thing I don't like is that the cover to the sequel, I'm not a fan of. I love this cover. The sequel's cover, not so much. But I'm excited to continue the story and find out what happens, and I need more of Corin. Yeah. That's my thoughts on Sufficiently Advanced Magic. The only book I didn't write notes on, I think, Stars Above. So, I read this semi-recently, so I do remember quite a bit. The basic thoughts on this book is that I really liked it. I liked seeing extended parts, I think, of the original series, and it's basically a book of short stories, which I thought it would be. The last short story, Something Old, Something New, was 100% my favourite, I think, because it was all new. It was like set after winter, whereas everything else was giving us a little bit like extra detail of the original story, which is great. Not my favourite of the series, but it's just a short story collection. This is why I write notes, because now I don't have much else to say. It's, I think if you really enjoyed the series, this is great because you just get a little bit more time with characters you have already kind of fallen in love with, and the last short story especially is just something very special and loved. Yes. Then move on to Reaper Man from Terry Pratchett. Now, I had very high hopes for this because Death, one of my favourite characters, if not my favourite character of the Discworld series. And I wished he was in it more. I wished he featured more in this book. Wendell Poon, if you've read the book, you will know who he is. And his story and what he goes through is fun, entertaining, really liked. If I was not expecting a Death story, and Death does feature in it, and he is a part of the main point of the story, but I wanted more of him, and I was sad when I didn't get more of him. Terry Pratchett is a master of writing this absurd world, that makes sense, and he's funny with the way he kind of writes his characters. You know, I enjoyed it. It's just not one of my favourites. Still a good book. Definitely still would read. Yeah. Death Rat is also awesome. If you've read it, you know. We'll go on from one yellow book to a second yellow book, which is the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I did talk about this in another video. Check it out. It is literally called A Babble of Songbirds and Snakes. But TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, this book confused me. I still feel a little bit confused. And the last chapter gave me whiplash. Pretty much it. If you want more, check out that video. Shameless self-plug. To continue, I forget, it's manga, wrong side. Ballad. Really enjoyed this book. It's weird because I don't have too much to say on it, purely because I knew what to expect from the anime. This volume hasn't quite caught up to the ending bit of the anime, but you know, I think the art style of this is really pretty. The pacing's really good, and you know, the characters is just quite funny. As for the premise, if you guys haven't or don't know what Ballad is, it is about I can't think of the right word, damn it. A vampire who's very much into manga and anime and Japanesey stuff is doing his thing. He is the boss of a section of the demon world, as the demon world is kind of set up in territories, and he's the boss of one of those. And just, you know, during his day-to-day life, he's, you know, watching anime, reading manga, the usual. A human girl walks into his territory and shenanigans occur. If that sounds, I don't know if that's a very good, don't know if that's the best way to describe it. It's just the very basic plot. But yeah, Staz the vampire, he's pretty cool. And I know it gets better from watching the anime. So I'm excited to see from once the anime has stopped in the manga to then see where it goes. Well, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. The Wheel of Time, book number 3, The Dragon Reborn. So, I didn't love this book, which is strange, because I've been really enjoying The Wheel of Time. And considering it's called The Dragon Reborn does not show up much in this book. I got kind of bored, I think, during it, and the bits where I probably shouldn't have gotten bored, I didn't enjoy because I didn't like the characters. Matt in this book annoyed me. He was very, like, almost arrogant, very selfish. People might disagree. The way the story's developed, how the powers of certain people have developed, his is interesting. I'm curious to see what the limitations are on it. But his personality at the moment, I wouldn't want to be around, because he's very selfish and kind of a shitty friend, in my opinion. But on the other hand, you know, how the girls in this book treated him at the end of the book, I thought was also kind of shitty friendy. So maybe it's just a thing that's happening with them. Perrin I enjoyed in this book. I think the struggles that he's having with his powers and the moral dilemma, maybe, you know, his arc in this book, his plot was interesting. I anytime he came into the book, I was like, I kind of perked up again, because I liked him and his story was interesting, and I just liked it. It was quite part of the story was a very normal thing of like him figuring out love and all that, and dealing with that feelings. Rand, being the Dragon Reborn, as I said, just wasn't really a part of it, and the parts that we did see with him was he's not doing great. He's having a bit of a rough time. Story going crazy. How crazy? Maybe we'll find out in the next book. Nynaeve is kind of a dick in this book. Not to be hating on her. I'm sure she's having a bit of a rough time, but I think it's just, she always feels like she should be the leader. Obviously, it's part of her backstory with, you know, the fact that she was wisdom in the town, but she's constantly squabbling with Elaine in this book. And Elaine's okay, you know, she's getting there. But Nynaeve has a thing of just like constantly tugging on her braid. And it got annoying for me to read that line repeatedly. Anytime she came up, she was tugging on her braid, or then tugging so hard that she didn't realise it hurt. Okay, Nynaeve, sure. Yeah, and just to say, like, the kind of the girl's reaction to Matt at the end of the book also annoyed me. So it was a mixture of between I was enjoying it, I was bored, and I didn't like the characters. Which is probably why I didn't enjoy this book as much as the others. I'm excited, less so, I think, to continue. I'm going to obviously continue the series, but I'm less so excited about it than I was before I read The Dragon Reborn. We'll see what happens. I then read Throne of Glass, and it doesn't help when I don't have the book markings, book covering faces, sleeves. That's what I'm looking for. The book sleeves. I just like it how bad. Anyway, besides the point, this book, I figured out what it is about Sarah J. Maas, is that her books, for me, are like edamame cheese. Full of holes, but I still really like it. You know, Selena, for the most of the time, I liked her. Although she was inconsistent. Is she this badass assassin, or is she not? We get told a lot that she's this badass assassin, that she's... You know, I didn't see much of it. We get told about it a lot, but not so much the seeing. You know, we see her have people go into her room and she's fast asleep and she doesn't react at all. You know, like I thought a badass assassin would. And she could act childish as well quite a bit of the time. But she's a cool badass assassin, trust me. And then the ending was also just a bit unbelievable, but it's magic. 'Cause magic. And this is what I found. Like, I still really enjoyed this book, even though I can still see there are quite a few problems with it. I gave this book 4 stars, and it's full of problems, but I just really enjoy it. I think I just really, unlike Poloni, I don't, with his writing style, I really get on with Sarah J. Maas's. So I think I'm just going to accept that there are problems with these books, and problems I probably usually pick apart, I think, a bit more in books that I didn't necessarily enjoy, but because I like it, I mean, I know there's problems, and I think if you can look past the problem, it's a really enjoyable book, and I can look past the problems because I get on with the writing style. I'm repeating myself now. Anyway, moving on to Jurassic Park. I read this book, finally. I liked it. I liked the book. Lex is the most annoying child in fiction ever. I didn't like her. I wanted her to get eaten so many times, just so she'd be off the page. You know, Tim, the other kid, was less annoying, but then, you know, children in a crisis, how realistic was it? I'm not sure, because I feel like certain things that Lex did in the book, children are not that stupid, sometimes. I think that's, the movie definitely gave Lex's character a bit more leeway in being the smarter child. I enjoyed the explanations of the science behind Jurassic Park, and also kind of Malcolm's perspective of the world and the park especially. And, you know, the kind of detail in the book with the action sequences, I think were really great. I still preferred the movie, personally. But it was cool. It was a good book. If you like dinosaurs, read it. I, myself, don't know if you could tell, I like dinosaurs. Moving on to the first fiction of Neil Gaiman, of Neverwhere. This book put me through a bit of a loop. I didn't know if I liked it until about 2/3 of the way in, and then I've realised I do like it. Neil Gaiman's writing style took me a while to get used to, but I'm glad I have, because I'm now excited to read more. His imagination and creativity that has gone into, like, Neverwhere is phenomenal to me. But I think part of the reason why I didn't know if I liked it is because I wasn't really getting on with the protagonist. And I think it was just his kind of reactions to certain scenes. So, again, a bit of a spoiler alert, so, you know, skip if you don't want to hear this. You know, after he loses his job, his home, his fiancée, all his money, basically after he loses everything, after helping this girl who was pretty much dying on the street, you know, she's part of this magic world, he then gets sucked into this magic world, and she kind of just then dumps him, and she, like, not the fiancée, the girl who he saved her life. I'm not explaining this very well. He then goes to her after finding out he's in this magical world to basically be like, hey, what's going on? Help me, please. And she says no. So what does our protagonist, the character that we, you know, need to get behind, he decides that he is just going to die and cry a little bit, and he's just accepting waiting for death. it's kind of pathetic for, like, not the character. The character I felt was pathetic, so therefore I couldn't rally behind him and get excited. So I don't, until he had a bit more of a personality, a bit more progression within the story and started to develop internally, is when I realised I was enjoying the book. Because initially I was just like, I don't like you. You know, the world building in this book is phenomenal, like I said. The night market, the kind of things with the tubes, just the idea of London below, which is the setting, is amazing. And I'm just, this book has left me curious and excited to read more of Neil Gaiman's work. And I feel like I'll enjoy it more now that I know what to expect of him. Whether I'm wrong now, we'll find out. I finally found an Agatha Christie book that I could really get behind, with The Mysterious Affairs at Styles. Poirot, I really enjoyed this book, and I couldn't find anything that I didn't like about it. I found the POV with Hastings very funny, especially when he had critical thoughts about Poirot. And one thing another point I really liked is that, especially compared to kind of like the Miss Marple books, Poirot seemed much more active in the murder investigation. And while it is, I think, technically withholding information from the reader, it's done in a way that isn't frustrating. So as we're in the perspective of Hastings, who's, you know, with Poirot trying to figure out what's happened, and certain points Poirot's just like, no, you try and figure out, you know the information I know, come to your own conclusions. And Hastings finds it annoying. The reader, I found it annoying, but in a endearing way, because it's part of Poirot's character, rather than just information being withheld to the reader. As Hastings' perspective definitely dictates, I think, a lot of my enjoyment from the book because of his interactions. And yeah, he gives you his thoughts about who murdered Emily Inglethorpe, and you are constantly kind of given a lot of info to the point that it's relatively disorientating. But again, I think that's a good way, because you have so much information to sift through. It's not cut and clear who the murderer is until Poirot explains it at the end. And I think I prefer that formula. Whether, I'm going to continue on with my Agatha Christie reading, but I definitely found that I just enjoyed this book so much more than any of the others I've read so far. I also discovered that The Mysterious Affair at Star was her first published novel, which I found incredible, purely because I would have thought maybe something like Miss Marple or one of her other novels was the very first one, but no. Mysterious Affairs. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, that was just, I thought it was an interesting tidbit. With that being said, I've then come on to my reread of the month, which was Poison Study, if I can get this book back in. I love Poison Study. I knew I was going to love Poison Study, and I tried to really think about, how this, maybe it's because I'm biased and I've read this book a couple of times. Although I found, reading it in preparation to review it, I found a couple things that I didn't notice before, I think, in previous rereads. I still love all the characters. Yelena, our main character, is, again, I think progression, obviously, in stories is really important, and I think from when you first meet her, the beginning of the book, to how she is at the end of the book, is really great to read. I think the characters you meet along the way, I'll just say their names, but you won't know them, so you got Valek, you've got Ari and Janko, and their personalities and the way they're written are just funny and fun. Not saying that the way they interact within the world is great, and kind of Yelena's, just like I say, it's her progression I just love throughout this story. I read this entire book in a day, which I think says a lot. Although, to be honest, I did tell myself I was going to read it in a day because I left it to last minute. Anyway, having read the whole series, I obviously know what to expect in thing, and I really enjoyed the subtle foreshadowing that Maria puts in the books. And I think until you read the entire series, you won't know what that foreshadowing is. And it wasn't until I was looking at it with a bit more of an analytical perspective, I never noticed it. But it's also been a while since I've read it. Now, the main question is, does Mistborn overtake it as my ultimate favourite series of all time? I'll have to read more to find out. At the moment, it's a really tough call. Well, I have to see how the series goes to whether Mistborn does overtake it. Because at the moment, I think Poison Study, they're either neck and neck, or Poison Study still just has the lead. But we'll find out. And yeah, that is my books. Oh, I forgot to mention Sandman with the comic. I've just got to the bit, and I've now decided, like, rather than saying law, I've got through Sandman a bit more. I'm going to kind of say a bit more on the actual story. So if you don't want to know, or you're going to read Sandman for yourself, I guess bye, but for those who want to stick around, hi. Sandman, I've just got to the bit where he has got the ruby part of his, like, the man who had the Sandman's ruby has now been dealt with, and he's just come into, like, pretty much his full power again, and I'm very excited to see where the story progresses from here now that he's got more power. I'm about, I think it's 20% of the way through the book, so I'm very excited. But with that being said, I hope you guys are having great. Like I say, my last video crazily blew up a lot. I don't know how that happened, but if you're new here from that video, hi, welcome. I talk and babble a lot, but I hope you enjoy it. And yeah, I have a kind of a special thing occurring over the next video, which will be tomorrow. So stay tuned. Oh, there's going to be 2 videos tomorrow actually, so stay tuned. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying awesome, and I will see you guys in the next video.